Sheila Gunn-Reid for Rebel News. I'm here in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. I'm rapidly losing daylight, but I am standing in front of the Battleford Wildlife Federation building, a building that holds about 105, 110 people for a meeting of the Saskatchewan Prosperity Project, wherein they will be discussing issues of Western independence, specifically relating to Saskatchewan. Now, regular viewers of Rebel News will know that we frequently cover independence events in Alberta, from petition signings to town halls, as canvassers are working hard to achieve 177,000 signatures within the 120-day time frame to trigger a referendum on Alberta independence sometime this fall. Now, those numbers are important because in Alberta, there's a much lower bar to trigger a citizen-led referendum. It is 15% of the number of voters in the last election, which is 177,000. In Saskatchewan, the referendum process is non-binding, and to trigger a referendum, canvassers would have to collect 125,000 signatures, or 15% of eligible voters. Now, I want to, as an Albertan, find out if they are inspired by us in Alberta with what we're doing, if they are going to pressure their provincial government to change the referendum process so that it is something more than just symbolic. And I want to hear about what their grievances are with Confederation. Let's go check it out.
So I want to make this very clear, as SPP and Shakari Rising, like, as I said, we're not political, we're not left or right, because as soon as you are labeled as one, you lose half the province. We need to unite everybody in this province, and that includes the First Nations people, because this affects all of us.
There still needs to be more engagement. And I like this, you know, I think even a lot of First Nations would be interested in speaking and having sitting at the table with you guys, that really want to make this happen. I really do believe so. Let's do our best to try to put our differences aside, because we all bleed the same blood.
Yes.
Something needs to be done. Kind of given up on that in the last 2 years. It's sad to say, for hope. That's the simple answer, for hope. Just the state of Canada, the state of, well, Saskatchewan's doing decent. As far as the nation goes, I think we're doing very well. I'm pretty proud to be in Saskatchewan. I love living here. But the trajectory of the entire nation, I just don't think it can be decent. So we don't have a choice to stay or leave. We have to either sit or stand on our own two feet.
What do you think about what's happening in Alberta with our separatist movement?
Looking good. Looking good. I hope to see similar happen here in Saskatchewan.
So explain to us the problem with the legislation in Saskatchewan. You really don't have binding citizen-led referendum legislation at all.
No, we don't. And even if we were to hold a plebiscite, it is non-binding, so it's a really expensive, basically public opinion poll that doesn't give us any legal weight. We also can't challenge it in court if the government chooses to act or to listen to the people. So I guess what we're trying to do is enforce legislation so that we can hold a binding referendum and that our voices can be heard.
You spoke a little bit about the history of the government acting on citizen-led referendum.
Yes, so the history goes back to 1923 was the last time the government actually enacted on it, and it was done for prohibition. There was another one done in 1991. It was a plebiscite, and the majority of the citizens agreed that they wanted government be accountable for a budget, and they never acted in on it, despite the fact that it had 79% support.
But Scott Moe has a majority government. He could fix this at any point.
Yes, it would literally take them changing the legislation, giving us the mechanisms, and he could pass the bill with the majority government with no issues.
And Alberta already has the template. So why do you think Scott Moe doesn't trust his citizens the way Danielle Smith does?
Because I don't think Scott Moe has his citizens' backs the same way that Danielle Smith does. And I think that's a consensus in Saskatchewan because we often admire Danielle Smith and wish she was our premier, or we had a premier that had her backbone and her tenacity. We just don't.
Well, that's a wrap from here in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, where 137 people came through the door to hear about the structural inequities between the West and Ottawa, but they also heard some disappointing news because as it sits right now, the people of Saskatchewan cannot force their government to bring forward a binding plebiscite on independence. But the good news is Scott Moe sits in a majority government, so that could change if Scott Moe wanted it. And so I think it's incumbent on the people of Saskatchewan to pressure their government to force Scott Moe to let them have their say. From here in Saskatchewan, I'm Sheila Gunray. To see more reports like this from all across the prairies where a fire is burning and that fire is for independence, please go to independencereports.com.